fly, so they don't go into certain areas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the first time I was there, which was about 3 years ago, it was really very moving from one to another. And I didn't realize how many I knew.
I can imagine.
I mean,
exactly.
Since 1961 here, you go through a lot, and very fond memories, very fond memories. And I enjoy it now, going up every year and saying hello to my friends, and you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Must be sad and.
Yeah,
and at
yeah.
the same time.
Well, it's really not sad because I'm getting up in that age also, and I'll be moving on. And
right.
it's just nice to know that there's a connection. It's a connection, and I think it's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Jesuits are a tight-knit group.
Yeah, yeah. They did some very nice things, well, especially for me. I mean, they've done wonderful things, and I'm forever grateful for it. So,
wow.
And they've done some kind of nasty things too, but that's individual, right? They can do things. They could twist your arm.
The Jesuits are knocked in some quarters, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I
don't knock them at all.
No.
I think they use people, but I think that they give back as much as they use the people.
Oh, sure.
So I think it's a give and take type of thing. I think they give you opportunities that you probably wouldn't have if you were in other orders, you know, even as a layperson saying that.
Exactly.
So I think that I've certainly benefited more than I've given, I think.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You're looking good, and you're sounding good.
Thank you.
Don't wave into the camera too much, and you'll be fine.
We're a little lower today.
Just look over his head. We want to catch it right up about there. And
Okay.
Should we put some up there? Should I go like this?
We should put a target up there. Next time we'll give you a
hat.
Mickey Mouse beanie.
With a
Wear
propeller.
that, and look at the top of the ears, and then we'll have you right on target, and your back won't suffer.
I could do
And
that.
You're not going to trip yourself out on that.
No.
Now, are there any no's that I have to be aware
There are
of?
no no's.
No no's?
All we're doing is recording.
Okay.
And
You'll edit out later.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really any editing. I mean, there will be a transcript in the sense that he will eventually talk about the parts that he wants. But all we're trying to do is get different parts where you've talked about things. The history of St. Peter's, the history of yourself, I'm sure will come up at some point around
sure.
the whole thing, what you've done. It's, where is St. Peter's? What is St. Peter's?
Mm-hmm.
This is primarily an archive piece, but we also look at it to be able to take a story out of it. So whoever you talk about, you're just talking. It's like,
Sure.
I don't have the fire going, but it's a fireside chat with Alan Lozier.
What's the dog's name? FDR's dog.
Oh Christ! Now you gotta go ask me.
FDR's dog. Oh,
I'm Checkers, but that's Nick's.
Checkers.
Checkers.
Checkers, yeah.
Well, it's the Checkers speech.
Oh,
that was a different speech.
I'm Falfa. So you can.
Falfa.
So you can.
All right. But you know.
this is going to go
you
into
can't
some
do
time
anything wrong.
capsule? This?
Well, whatever he's making in his archives is where it ends up there, and then
Okay.
it's extracted. Then you want to do some piece. I'm not
That's
saying it
good.
might
No,
not
I
be
think
used
so.
for publicity.
Yeah, I
It
know.
might be
I
used
know.
for publicity.
Sure.
It might be used for a piece that you do on the computer science department later. It's just footage.
That's
and
good.
we've been running for the last 5 minutes, so it's running on 2 machines.
Very good.
So continue.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Mel.
fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Before we start, thank you very much for participating. I say, look over here. And the only thing I ask is, when I ask a question, if you can repeat the question and then
Okay.
give your answer, that would give us a time marker so
Okay.
we can go from there. I'll ask you some
Okay.
easy questions first.
Fine.
Anytime you want to stop, just let me know.
Okay, sure.
Okay, great.
Fine.
Okay, thanks for showing up, Dr. Calianese.
Thank you.
Okay, when and where were you born?
I was born in Carl Place, Long Island, September 2nd, 1933.
Great. Okay, tell me some about your parents and your siblings, if you have any, growing up.
I'm an only child, spoiled. Okay. My mother and father. My father was an Italian, second generation. First generation American. My mother was also first generation American from Polish background. We lived in Jersey City most of my life, downtown Jersey City, St. Peter's Parish. So that's basically the background. My grandmother and grandfather came from Italy on my father's side in the early 1900s, and my grandfather and grandmother came from Poland in the early 1900s, and they settled in Jersey City.
Great. Do you have any stories about your parents or grandparents coming into Jersey City? What did they think of the town when they first moved here?
I can't answer that particular question about how they felt around the town. I was closer to my grandmother and grandfather on my father's side, Raffaella and Alessandro. Um, I think it's unfortunate that when they came to the United States, they felt that they had to be immersed right into the culture. So they refused to talk Italian to any of the grandchildren, and I think that was unfortunate. But other than that, they were lovely people. I loved my grandmother. I loved my grandfather. We had mutual respect. It was just a grand, whole Italian family, warm Italian family.
That's wonderful. So tell me, where did you go to grammar school and high school?
Grammar school, PS 16, Cornelius F. Bradford, here in Jersey City. My high school was from Ferris High School. It was housed in on 7th and Cole Street, on Montgomery Street, where it is right now. I went through what we called St. Public all the way through until I came to St. Peter's College.
Very good. Okay, so when did you first consider attending college after the high school years?
Well, I wanted to be a pharmacist. I loved chemistry. I wasn't too crazy about physics or biology, but I did like chemistry very much. So in my sophomore year, I started to think about going to college as a chemistry major. I happened to be fairly good in mathematics, which turned out to be my major subject, and Latin. We had Latin at that time in public schools. I had Latin for 4 years, and that was a tremendous help to me. So I started to think about college in my sophomore year in high school.
So when you decided to go to college, what ideals or goals did you set for yourself once you decided to attend St. Peter's?
Well, the big goal was to get through college. I was the first Calianese in any history to go to college, and my goal was to get out of college and make sure that was pretty well secure. It was the first part of a generation that would follow through college career. So that was my goal. As I mentioned before, I wanted to be a pharmacist. St. Peter's was not my first college, by the way. I've gone through a couple before that. I went to St. John's School of Pharmacy, and I attended there for 6 months. And I decided that pharmacy was not what I was looking for, so I transferred out. I had an appointment to West Point, and I went to West Point for 6 months, and decided that military was not my life. And St. Peter's College happened to be a local college, and I decided to apply. They accepted me in '53, and here I am.
Great. So what were your first and continuing impressions of Jersey City while you were attending St. Peter's College?
Well, the impressions of Jersey City, growing up and attending colleges. Certainly growing up, I have very fond memories of downtown, lack of air conditioning, lack of television, close neighborhood ties. Hot nights, everyone was out on what we call the stoops, and would play games late at night. They were like families within families of neighborhoods. So I've only had fond memories of Jersey City when I was growing up. St. Peter's College to me and to my family, which was very important to me, represented a very solid, very strict, very important educational institution. And I was really very pleased to be accepted and go through the curriculum. So being part of Jersey City didn't mean much, except that it was St. Peter's College, and this is where I lived, so I was completely comfortable.
Great. Once you arrived at St. Peter's, what were some of your first impressions of the campus?
The campus was small, but again, in Jersey City, being a resident of Jersey City, that was not a problem because everything is actually condensed in Jersey City. So I found that the campus was almost isolated in a sense because the quadrangle at that time, gave you a feeling of being away from the city. You had the surrounding buildings. We hadn't built the library or Pope or any of the modern buildings, but you still had a feeling of being part of an institution, and only part of that institution. They had to walk out of the institution to get into Jersey City, even though it was an integral part of Jersey City. So that was the feeling I had when I was going to school. Yeah.
What was your first day on campus, if you can remember back then? What were some of your other impressions of the college in general, the people, or some of the other
As
things?
a student or as a faculty?
As a student.
As a student, okay. My first day on campus was registration. Registration was completely different then than it is now. It was lockstep. You sit down, these are the courses you'll be taking, fill them in, we'll sign them, and then you go to class, and that was it. And we had hazing at the time, in which the freshmen had to wear beanies to be identified by upperclassmen. Hazing was very mild hazing, by the way, very controlled, but still encouraged by the faculty and by the administration. So my feeling, my first couple of days was, I guess, very much like what freshmen feel here, that you're sort of confused, meeting new people and things like that. But they were my initial impressions.
You mentioned the neighborhood and how close-knit they were. As a St. Peter's student, did you encounter any hostility towards anybody in the neighborhood surrounding the college?
Not at all. Not at all. But that was a feeling, as a student, that was the feeling throughout the whole city at the time. You can feel comfortable going from one area of the city to another area without having any problems, security problems, or any type of problems that might arise nowadays. It just seemed to be warm, and everybody seemed to support you. Everybody seemed to be looking out for you as a person, you know. And I felt that we were completely secure in our feelings. And I'm talking about, I think, my colleagues also at that point.
Excellent. So St. Peter's was an all-male school at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about any diversity on campus, such as ethnic, racial, or women on campus in any capacity? Do you have any recollections of diversity?
As an undergraduate, no. It was strictly a male school, and there were plans to stay male. I do have to say that minorities were not that well representative on campus at that particular point. So there were really very, very few. I don't remember any instances where there were any problems in that nature. However, the fact is we were basically an institution that was white and Catholic background. Yeah, of course that's changed to the better.
Okay. Let's see. You attended St. Peter's from 1953 until
1956. I graduated in 1956 as a math major. I changed from a chemistry major in my second year to mathematics. And I was very happy to do that. I liked mathematics. It came easy to me. I did a lot of tutoring for my classmates who had difficulty with mathematics. And I felt that I enjoyed the fact of teaching and getting involved with transferring my information to my colleagues.
Very good. So when you were a student at St. Peter's, how were the semesters or academic years broken down in your day?
Well, I came in 1953, in January of 1953. During that era, the high schools graduated every half year, every 6 months. They didn't have a May graduation, only a May graduation, June graduation. They also had a January graduation. So St. Peter's College accommodated that type of schedule. What they did was they took people from half-year graduating in January, and then started a whole new semester for them. So their first semester was our traditional spring semester. Those students and myself had to go through a summer course to make up. So in the second year, we sort of we became a full class. The semesters were a semester as traditional as they are right now, except that we had the lame duck period. We had the Christmas break. And when we came back, we had, I believe, a couple of weeks of class, and then we had our final exams. So the schedule has changed quite a bit. Right now, we have a short fall trimester and a fairly long spring trimester. There, we had an equal amount, except we had a lame duck. They called it a lame duck session in between. I always felt that was very good for studying, for relaxing, and then getting back to school and preparing for final exams. I thought that was a big benefit.
You can never have too much vacation.
No, that's right. That's true.
Okay, so tell me what a typical class day was like in terms of classes, homework, and student life.
All right. Typical class day was full packed. It was lockstep, so that the schedules were spread over the day. My classes ended around 3 o'clock. A lot of philosophy, a lot of theology, a lot of my major courses, studying, group studying. I used to, when I tutored my colleagues, I get up very early in the morning, maybe 6 o'clock, and I still do that now. I'd be here around 7. We would study for a couple of hours with my classmates in a classroom, an open classroom. Then we'd go to normal classes. We'd have lunch together as a group, and then we would go to classes until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I go to work. And then most of our students went to work after that, after class. And then it would start from one day after another.
Very good.
The first year was tough because we had to come during the summertime, and that cut into a work period that most of us made a lot of our money to carry us over for a year, but we had to, or at least our parents had to sacrifice. We had to go to school, which wasn't bad at all, but they had to sacrifice. Yeah.
What kind of job did you have to support?
I worked for the A&P downtown Jersey City. There's an A&P on Jersey Avenue, right off Newark Avenue, and I worked there during the days and weekends. During the Christmas holidays, I also added a job at the post office. Most of my colleagues went down, well, most of my fellow students went down to the post office during the Christmas break, and we made what we thought a lot of money. Yeah.
You mentioned the dining hall. Can you mention the dining hall experience and the student union in your day?
We didn't have a student union in a sense. We did have a small group, a small area that we collected. It was outside of the dining hall. The dining hall was run by a, oh gosh, I forgot his name. But he was pretty strict in running the dining hall. So you were there to eat, not linger, and out. But they did have study halls. They did have study areas. And most of our studying was done either there or in the classroom. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me what a typical St. Peter's student dressed like in your day?
Okay. The dress code, shirt and tie, a jacket. Seniors had to wear short academic senior gowns. They were waist-high academic gowns. Very formal. If not, you were ushered out of your classroom. And that was our dress. But shirt and tie, very formal. I won't comment as to whether that was good or not. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. In fact, I would prefer many times that my students would come in once in a while with a shirt and tie. Yeah.
Without a baseball cap
Without a
or other.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. I know when they're going on interviews. They come with a shirt and tie, or they're getting married, right? Or they have an interview here, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. No, but when I teach, I normally teach with a shirt and tie. Yeah.
Which is good. Okay, so what kind of rules and regulations did you have as a student that you were expected to follow?
Okay, rules and regulations. When I was a student, you had to be quiet. You had to behave like a gentleman. If you weren't, you were pulled over by the prefect of discipline. and you could be talked to very harshly. You were really expected to study, and you really did study. I think everyone really felt that there was a no-nonsense college, and the expectation was that you would produce at your level. I mean, and everything was set up for that. Even final exams are set up for that. If you didn't study and you failed the final exam, you had one more chance to pass the course. You had a makeup, but the maximum grade that you can get for the makeup, I believe, your maximum grade was, I think, 80. So even though you're going in with a 90 or 95, if you failed that final exam, then the maximum you can get for that course was an 80. So they were very strict academic rules, and we accepted them without complaint, and we adjusted our life to try to live by them. Yeah. And if we goofed, we knew that we were the ones that were goofing. Yeah. Goofed occasionally.
Okay, once again, what was your major, and how did it prepare you for postgraduate life?
Okay, my major when I first started was chemistry, and I had done very well with organic chemistry. I got into inorganic chemistry, and I didn't know what they were talking about. I felt that I was completely lost. I couldn't understand how molecules were being set up, and it was really a shock to me because I wanted to be a pharmacist first, and then I wanted to be a chem major. I wanted to be a research chemist, and it just baffled me. I just couldn't understand, and I mean, I studied very hard. It probably was one of the hardest courses I've ever taken. I passed the course, but I came out of that course thinking I had absolutely no knowledge of what I had gone through. My memory, I think, my memory helped me get through the course. However, I was good in mathematics, and I had formed a nice bond with the head of the math department, Dr. Cruz, Mr. Cruz at the time, and he came to me and convinced me to go into mathematics and not to pursue chemistry any longer. So I changed my major in my junior year, beginning of my junior year, and I became a math major, and they prepared me very well. It was the year. My year was one of the first years that the mathematics department split from the physics department. They were combined, one department, the science, the physics and the mathematics department. They split into the mathematics department, and they got two brand new faculty members, excellent men. One came from the University of Notre Dame, one came from the University of Maine. Reiner was the one from Notre Dame, and I think O'Toole came from the University of Maine, and they came in with high ideals, and they really pushed us. And I think we had a very, very good background. I have to say, it probably would match almost any college in the area for undergraduate background. They were very tough, demanding, but they were exciting. As a result, I got a fellowship to the University of Notre Dame. Not only myself, but 3 other members of my department from St. Peter's College got fellowships to Notre Dame, and we all went to Notre Dame.
Excellent, excellent. Mm-hmm. That was a dream of mine too.
Yeah,
Deferred.
That's right. The football college, but also a good college.
That's right. The Catholic college.
That's right.
So tell me, what were some of the required subjects you had to take within this challenging curriculum?
Oh heavens! You had to take. The core was very heavily philosophy oriented, theology oriented. Very tough courses. You had to have public speaking for 1 credit. You had to take philosophy orals in order to graduate. Looking back on that, I think that experience helped me with my orals for my Ph.D. Just preparing for it, making sure that I wouldn't fail that oral, and also the face-to-face being questioned and queried. I thought was very valuable. I was frightened all the way through, like everyone else who was just frightened, but it was a great experience. We had to take chemistry, we had to take we had to take physics, we had to take a language, of course English and mathematics. Almost the same core that we have right now, except we had a lot more physics, a lot more philosophy, a lot more theology. We didn't have the social sciences at that particular point. We didn't have sociology, we didn't have psychology and things like that.
So out of all your classes, which was your favorite, and why did you favor this one subject?
Of all of my classes, my favorite, I would have to say that my favorite was my calculus course. It was a summer calculus course. It was a tough, very condensed, I believe it was in 6 or 7 week calculus course. We were meeting 5 times a week. It was extremely demanding, but I enjoyed it. I was, at that particular time, I was also tutoring my my classmates, and I just found it just, that particular course in my first year sort of solidified my whole feeling as a student worthy of a degree. And I felt that after taking that course I can get through and get a degree. For many people, getting a degree was kind of tough. Not everyone had the opportunity to go to college, and they were pretty selective. And you really felt that a lot of people would drop out. But after that course, I felt that I could do it, and I was just lucky. It happened to be a course that I liked.
Great. So was it testing or class-like instruction? How were you tested, or what was classroom instruction like when you went to school?
All right. Classroom instruction was strictly lecture. Very little show and tell. The technology was very low. We had overheads occasionally, but most of the time it was blackboard. And it wasn't green board, it was blackboard. It was a straight lecture. In fact, for my first 7 or 8 years teaching here was straight lecture. The exams were demanding. We had an exam period. And as I mentioned before, if you didn't pass the exam, you had only one chance to make it up. You had a make-up exam, but you had a reduced grade for that, for the course. So they were the type of exams, and of course the capstone was the oral exam in philosophy that everyone had to take.
So tell me about the school library, and was it an ideal place for group study, and how did you utilize the Johnson Library?
All right, the Johnson Library, which was housed in the basement of McDermott, where McDermott is right now, it wasn't conducive to studying in groups. For individual studying, yes, and they had a good collection of books. But for group studying, they weren't conducive. Of course, you had to silence. You had to be silent in the library itself. But the library had a very good collection. It was a very strict library, like all libraries in the nation at that point. You had to be quiet. You had to be. You couldn't communicate with anyone. You simply sat down and did everything for reading and research. So it was essentially the same as the libraries in the past. I'm not quite sure that much different nowadays. I think people going into libraries realize that they have to be quiet because people are concentrating. So I think there is an imposed silent, but in many areas you do have little areas for groups to congregate and study. So the library facilities were good. I'm not quite sure I made big use of them. We were pretty much text-oriented, except for some, for our dissertation. We had to write a dissertation also, and we had to do some research there. And they had everything that we needed.
What was your dissertation topic?
It had to do with a, oh gosh, this is going way back. Until we just started to talk, I didn't realize that we did have a dissertation requirement at that particular point. Mine was in mathematics, and I don't want to guess at this point. I forget. I think it was on the real number system, but I can't really be absolutely sure. Okay.
That's okay.
We're getting close anyway.
That's right. That's okay. That's cool. You're doing great. You want a
Right.
break, or you're fine?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Wonderful. You're doing wonderfully. Okay, we're on page 2.
Okay.
Who are some of the most memorable teachers you had at St. Peter's, and what made them so memorable?
Oh, memorable teachers. We had an English teacher called Edward Mellendick. He is now a Broadway actor. His name is Ed Lindick now. He's a graduate of St. Peter's College. He played in very, very fine plays on Broadway. 1776, he was in that production. He gave a very good English course. He was very critical in writing, and yet he was very praiseworthy when you did an extraordinary job. And I guess I got a lot of that course because he taught the students to go beyond just the normal presentation. He liked imagination in writing, even though it was a critique of poems and short stories. He wanted imagination, he wanted to get involved with it. And I think that was one of my favorite courses. I had George Anatelli, who was completely opposite of Ed Mellendick. George was a taskmaster, and but he was also English, and he forced you to understand what was going on. He was very impatient in class, and as a result, at least to me, that was good, because someone being impatient got my animal instincts up, and I tried to match it. Okay, he was very good. ROTC, I was in ROTC also. We had a mandatory ROTC requirement, and the ROTC instructors were very good. I enjoyed them very much. It was a sort of a practical approach to life. That was very much part of the student's life, the military. And I found that those instructors were very good. They were by the book, 1, 2, 3, 4, and with I guess with my mathematics bent, I sort of like that sort of, do it by the numbers approach. But I also like the arts and the English courses that I had. We had a chemistry teacher, Pegalotti. Jim Pegalotti was a teacher. Was a fine teacher, I'm sorry I didn't have him for inorganic chemistry. I think maybe it would have been different, but I didn't have him, but I enjoyed him as a teacher. Who else? I had my Father McGraw for philosophy. He just retired a couple of years ago, and he was a very, very strict teacher. I remember him. Of course, he frightened me most of the time. I'm not quite sure I understood everything that he presented, but he stood out. Father Pangborn, he taught theology. Very fine person. I really mean a very fine person. I learned an awful lot from him in many different ways. He was a very saintly, gave you a saintly approach. I remember one powwow edition we had put him walking on the Hudson River with a little caption saying Father Pangborn in his daily routine, walking on the water. But he gave an excellent course. There was a Mr. McNearney. He taught public speaking, and he was good. He forced you to get up there and speak, and he'd criticize you in front of people, which may or may not be the way psychologists suggest that you do nowadays. But the fact is, it hit home, and he made us feel that it was for our own good, and then that the criticism was to benefit us and not to criticize us and belittle us in front of people. So I think that was excellent. My math teachers, I think probably the most devoted teacher I've ever had was Mr. Cruz. He was head of the math department, and he was actually the chair of the department when I was first hired at St. Peter's College. He was very fine, very demanding, but his style was excellent. I copied a lot of his styles. He made sure that everyone understood, and yet go on fast. And he presented material that was extremely difficult, but in a way that a lot of people picked up that would probably not have picked up. So he was really a role model for me. I mentioned Reiner and O'Toole. They were very good. Reiner had a very good sense of humor. He was a math teacher. And he had a very good sense of humor, but he also taught very well. So they were very, very, I was very fond of all of those. Yeah.
Excellent. We'll get back to administrators in a minute. You mentioned ROTC.
Yes.
Can you tell me what the typical drill or routine was like for a ROTC student?
We had the ROTC curriculum at St. Peter's for all students. We had to take courses, and we had to go for drill once a week. You had a morning drill and you had an afternoon drill. The morning drill was the arts and sciences, and the afternoon drill was the School of Business at that particular time. So we had 2 battalions. And you'd simply march around, controlled by student officers, and then above them, controlled by the cadre of the program here. We had, I forgot how many credits we had, but we had a lot of credits in almost all areas: strategic planning, strategic warfare, and history of warfare, and things like that. And it gave us a different perspective on college. So it was coursework every week and a drill every week, and also summer camp. You had to go to summer camp once during your career at St. Peter's in your junior year. Yes, I went down to North Carolina. I forgot the camp. Very hot, very demanding, but it was fun. It was fun.
Okay, getting back to administrators, among the Jesuits, outside the ones you've already mentioned, which have had an impact on your days at St. Peter's when you were a student there?
Student, I guess the prefect of discipline, Father H, I believe. I forgot his last name. But he was he roamed the school. He roamed the hallways to make sure everything was fine. We didn't see the president very much, as I remember. That was Father Shanahan. I saw the registrar occasionally and the treasurer, but in most cases we didn't interact with the administrators very much.
Okay. Speaking of Jesuits, what impact did a Jesuit education hold for you when you were, while you were in school and immediately afterward? How did you reflect on your days as a Jesuit?
I really didn't reflect on it while I was going through school. It had a fine reputation, St. Peter's. So I really didn't understand Jesuit education until I got into other educational institutions that were not Jesuit. And then I realized the benefit in retrospect. I went to Notre Dame, and that was a very fine school, but there was a difference. There was more I think there was a lot more discipline at St. Peter's College, but there was also a lot more individual feeling. You realize that the discipline was for yourself and it was for the benefit of you, the education of the whole man. You don't realize that until you get out. We had the same doubts as the students do right now. Why philosophy? Why theology? Why English so much? Okay, I can understand English, the communication problem, but why philosophy? Why theology? And boy, I'm certainly glad that it happened, because it opened a whole new life to me. And I realized that when I went to other institutions. I went to, as I mentioned, Notre Dame. I went to Stevens Institute of Technology. That's where I got my Ph.D. It was a very technical. Outside of technology, there was very little. And you can see how students could be channeled to one discipline and have difficulty moving from that discipline to another discipline. You can understand where the liberal arts works in terms of St. Peter's College, where you have to make career changes many times during your lifetime. When I was growing up, you had one career. You expected one career, and you expected to die in that career. In the latter part of my years, that changed because society changed in '69, I think, anyway. But the restricted education of these other institutions, I could see where they would have difficulty if their, say, engineering dried up. What happens? What do they do? That's all they know. You know, so I realized that was happening, talking to them and seeing their not that I'm broad at all, but I could see where they were very channeled. Their conversation was strictly in that discipline. There was very little conversation outside of that discipline. Notre Dame was a little bit different. You did have wide, but I thought that the individual feeling at St. Peter's College was stronger than at Notre Dame. Then I went to NYU for 7 years in mathematics, and there you were treated like a number. I remember when I resigned from NYU, I was shocked because I was called in by an advisor and he knew all about me, and I was really upset. And I told my wife, I said, "Gee, it's a shame that when I was leaving after 7 years, I found out that someone really knew all about me. I thought I was a number, and they just cranked the numbers. That was the feeling that you had. You didn't get that feeling at St. Peter's. You knew your classmates; they were willing to help you. You knew faculty, you knew administrators, and they were all willing to help you. And that's my reflection. And I still think it's about the same at St. Peter's. I think that's the same feeling.
I sense it too. Well, speaking of strangers for a moment, did any famous or memorable people visit the campus during your tenure as a student that maybe had an impact on you?
As a student? No, I can't remember. As a faculty member, yes, but as a student, I can't remember.
Okay,
no.
How about as a faculty member?
Oh, there have been a lot. We had Martin Luther King come to campus. We had Teddy Kennedy come to campus. We had lecture series that were presented, and a couple of faculty members, faculty members were invited for lunch with a celebrity, which I think was great. And I was invited one time. Dobie something, I forgot. It was a movie star, and I thought it was an exciting thing to talk to someone who was in the limelight at that particular time. We've had some very important people come to college. Commencement exercises, I think, have been excellent. Good opportunities to meet people outside of the normal. And I've been impressed by a lot of those. Osgood was one of them recently, and I was impressed with him. Mary Higgins Clark, I talked to her, and I was impressed with her. A lot of them. Some of them were kind of surprising. Some of them didn't realize that they had to give a major speech at commencement, and they didn't do it. They simply said thank you and sat down. It was very interesting. But commencement is primarily where we get to meet important people, or different people, I should say.
Have you sponsored anybody who eventually received a honorary degree from St. Peter's?
Yes, I did. Mrs. Genzer. She was a woman who is a very, very interesting person. Lena Genzer. She had with her husband a small mom and pop grocery store downtown Jersey City, right off Newark Avenue, and she probably threw me out of her store many times because that was my little route going up Newark Avenue, and she told me that she used to throw young kids out because they'd come in and take little apples and things like that. She wasn't really upset about it, but she had to control it, and she probably threw me out a couple of times. Her husband died, and she was elderly. She was in her 70s when someone convinced her to go to Rutgers. Rutgers had a small branch at Journal Square, and she went to Rutgers in her 70s, and she didn't like it very much. She walked over to St. Peter's College. She liked school, but she said that she didn't want to get into the Marjan type of living, waiting to die. That's what she used to say. That was her quote. She came to St. Peter's College and got her a degree in accountancy. That's when I got to know Lena. She came into the computer center one day. She was in her 80s. And she said that the computers are something new, and I want to learn all about them. So we made an arrangement, Lena and I, that knowing that it was a very technical, very demanding sequence of courses that she wanted. She had a very difficult problem with seeing. So we got her special equipment to view the monitor larger and also to view her printouts larger. So the arrangement we made was that Lena would sit in on a course for a semester, and then would take it for credit the next semester. So and she loved it, and she did about 8 or 9 years of that. Every day, show up. We used to arrange to make sure that she was picked up from her home, which was at Journal Square. It wasn't that difficult. We just had to get a student to make sure that they would pick her up and drop her off at night. And after going through a lot of courses, almost getting her certificates in data processing and programming, we decided to give her a degree, an honorary degree. And I thought it was a great honor for her family, and for St. Peter's, obviously. Yeah. So she got her degree. She would not tell us her age, but it had to be over 90. She had to be over 90 when she got her degree. I used to handle giving matzahs out during Passover to all of the departments in the college when she was alive, and we did it for 2 years after she died. She was a very fine person, Lena. Went to her funeral. She was a very, very fine person. Yeah, but that was the only person that I sponsored.
That's a great story.
Oh yeah, she was a great role model for the students. She was a very sharp woman, but also very down to earth. And she would, if students were fooling around, she'd tell them, "You should be doing work," you know. And she was really a very big role model for the students. She was in our lab every day for about 8 or 9 years, every day. And when it snowed, she'd call up to make sure that her ride was still coming, because she wanted. She said it was the only thing that kept her alive. That's what she told us. And I kind of suspect that too. And son used to call and thank St. Peter's for doing what they were doing for her. And it's a great story. It really is a great story. She lived a great story. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to get the yearbook out here. We're going to ask you about extracurriculars. How you holding up?
Oh, I'm doing fine.
You're doing an excellent job.
Can I take a drink of water?
Please do. Dr. Dolan the other day, he talked nonstop for 45 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, no breaks, no nothing. It was amazing. It was a feat worthy of. All right, we'll get to the.
You have my confirmation pictures there, I think.
There you go. Okay, I think they're natural sciences. Oh,
yes, we are.
First up here. This is good.
Okay, the advantage of having a name like Calianese, right?
Right on. Okay, Dr. Calianese, what are some of the extracurricular? Well, I'll just mention them.
Sure.
Okay, the Scabbard and Blade.
That was a ROTC group that was an honor. It was an honor group that you were asked to participate, and that was all. Yeah, we used to have. It was in a sense a social group. Yeah.
Okay, and intramurals.
I played sports in high school, and I just enjoyed it. So I went into some of the intramurals here at St. Peter's. I didn't participate that much in many of the activities because, like a lot of the students, we worked. And right after school, we worked. Yeah.
Okay. Other than extracurriculars, my mouth is not working here. Tell me some of the about the religious atmosphere on campus, about Mass, and some of the
retreats,
Catholic
and Mass.
devotionals.
Oh, sure. You had to participate. Okay. In retreats anyway. They used to have little slips you used to sign in for your retreats. And I could see that point, and it was, to me, it wasn't a checkup on how religious you were or anything. It's just that time was let off from school, and they wanted to make sure that at least you had the experience, whether you liked it or not. So I never complained about that. We can laugh at it now, but you really had to participate in at least the retreats that were on campus. Very religious. During May, we had a continuous rosary. It wasn't all around the clock, but we had you'd sign up, the Scabbard and Blade sign up, and you'd sign for slots, and you'd go into the chapel, which was in Ghana at that point. And you'd have a rosary, and then you'd have the May crowning. Even in a male school, that may seem strange, but we were very, we were fairly religious. At least we showed up anyway. Whether we were religious or not, that's individual, but we certainly showed up. Even in the voluntary masses that we had, we showed up. We showed up in droves for the Michaelmas. Oh, and it was not a required attendance. But I would say very few people were not there. You were crowded at the Michaelmas. It was honoring your classmates, and we felt that was important to us. Yeah. So in terms of religious, that was the impressions I had.
Very good. Did you tell me about on the opposite end, the political involvement on campus? Was there any sort of political activism, clubs, or any other sense?
There could have been. I was not part of them at all. I would have to say that there were. Knowing some of the people who came out of there that got involved with politics, I think probably Gannon Debating Society was a good spot for people who were politically oriented. Joe Dorey came out of that, and Reginald Stanton came out of that. He was in my class. Mike Bell came out of that. So I think probably there certainly were, but I didn't participate in those.
Okay, can you tell me what was the level on some of the shows of school spirit in your day, like rituals, ceremonies, or maybe pep rallies or such? How would you describe school spirit, and how was it demonstrated?
I think, I'm not quite sure we've gotten, in terms of school spirit, I don't think we've gotten too far away from where we are right now. There's always been a complaint when I was an undergraduate, when I've been a graduate, when I'm a faculty member, there's always been the complaint of non-participation by the students. That has always been part of it, but it also, I think, is part of the students' makeup and being a commuter. Well, we're in the process of change, but up to this point, we're still a commuter college, and people kind of float in and float out. They have jobs they have to attend. They have other functions they have to attend. They have to study. So I'm convinced that that's probably the nature of the college, and it won't change unless we change the structure of the college, which I think we're in the process of doing now. So the prep rallies, if we had a good basketball team, you'd have a lot of people at the rallies. If you had a poor basketball team, you had very few. So I don't think that's changed much at all. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me about some of the interesting students and/or characters that you encountered at your days as a student?
Interesting characters. I can't think of any characters at all as when I was a student. You got me on that one. If I remember, I'll pop it back, but I don't remember of any interesting strange characters on campus at that point. We had strange faculty. They were strange characters. We had one faculty, Jesuit, who he used to have a lantern in his window. It was one of those old railroad lanterns that turned green and red. Green meant he was in for consultation, and red meant he was not in. Another faculty member had a snake, and he had a daily feeding of a mouse to that snake that he invited students to observe if they weren't squeamish of that was an interesting one. A python, I think he had a python. We've had a chemistry teacher. I forget his name. He died tragically in an airplane crash. Very bright, as I understand, very wealthy, but never very strange. He played pianos he played the piano at night in bars. Extremely bright person in chemistry, and he also rode a motorcycle around a bar. At least that's what was reported. So we've had some very strange faculty, but you sort of enjoyed their strangeness. You could relate to them a little bit.
Names were omitted to protect the innocent, right?
I'm thinking. I don't want to. I'm just afraid to place names on them because I may be wrong, and I wouldn't want to.
That's okay.
Attribute the wrong person, but they were interesting.
Later.
We also had peacocks on campus. That was somewhat of an embarrassment to the college because we thought there was a male-female group, and there was only a male, and it was just a strange. It was just crazy. It was silly stuff. But they bounced back. I guess they're the only strange people. The faculty were stranger certainly than the students, as I can remember.
You always get interest with the oddballs.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay. Moving on from, okay, who were some of your best friends on campus as a student? And
as a student,
right, and
there was a fellow named Danielson. We went to school together, and we studied quite a bit. Dan Brandon was another student of mine, a friend of mine, who we were close with. I had. He wasn't a very close friend, but Reginald Stanton was in Scabbard and Blade, and we had some dealings with Reginald. He's a judge at this point. I don't know what Dan is doing now, Dan Brandon. I know that Danielson after he graduated St. Peter's, went into the service under the ROTC commission and retired from the service. But I haven't had contact with them for years. Yeah.
Okay, so so your friends and yourself, what'd you do for fun in between or after classes as a...
I worked. I had friends from high school I was fairly close with. I played basketball, some sports during the summer, but most of the time I worked. And I was also courting my wife at the time, so it took up my time, and studying took a lot of my time. Yeah.
Well-rounded. That's the important thing. Speaking of social functions and dances, did you have any regular dances sponsored by the college or any other functions of that type?
Well, we had dances sponsored by the college or organizations, fundraising type of things. We also had Senior Week, and I got involved with Senior Week. I handled one of the dances and the refreshments for that particular Senior Week. At that time, you were allowed to drink at the age of 18. So we did have, at least during Senior Week, we allowed beer on, at some of these functions. But we had regular functions. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go into broad terms here.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about some of your highlights and lowlights from your freshman year.
Highlights. Highlights of my freshman year, certainly in terms of getting through the freshman year with a fairly good GPA was a high point of my year. That was academically. A low point also was academically. I missed one of the medals, and I was dying to have a medal. I just missed it. I was next online. I just missed by a couple of points. So that was a disappointment to me. But it really didn't matter after a while. But it was a disappointment, I have to say that. Right after my freshman year was the big disappointment was my realization that chemistry was not what I was going to do the rest of my life. And it was also, as it turned out, probably the best decision I've ever made. So that was part of my freshman year. Just mulling that over, I hadn't really changed until I was a junior. Just also the friends that I built in the freshman year. Just reviewing that now, and that was a high point of my freshman year. Yeah.
Okay, how about sophomore year?
Sophomore year. Well, high point was, the low point was making my decision to get out of chemistry. That was absolutely my low point. And the high point at the end of the year was to decide getting into mathematics. I was still not very, I was still a little upset with my decision. It was a setback to me, so it bothered me a little bit. And I wasn't really convinced at that particular point it was the best decision. I thought about going back and redoing the inorganic chemistry, even though I passed it, but I realized I didn't know much about it at all. But I decided no, I'd go on, and I made my decision. I went on. So that was the highlight and the low light, low part. Anything else? ROTC became more important to me, and that sort of became more intense. It became more intensive in the sophomore year. I guess that's about what I did. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just
Yeah.
going on.
Okay.
Going in progression here.
Okay, go ahead.
I bet you know what's next.
Junior year, right? Well, junior year, I got fully involved in mathematics, and that was a real big high point. I also got involved in ROTC. My low point was I didn't do as well in ROTC that I expected to do well. To do. The summer camp to me was a disappointment. I realized that I probably would not make a very good military person. I'll tell you why. We went out on maneuvers at night, and I was the head of a small group. We were on reconnaissance, and we had been given directions, and we had to make connection with 3 different points. And I had to laugh at it now because I keep remembering it. The distance between one point and another was only a matter of 150 yards. Well, I missed my point by over 3.5 miles. 3.5 miles. So I realized that I wasn't a very good person in terms of space judgment, to a point where we had to give up. They found us roaming part of North Carolina, and they wondered what we were doing. They put us in a Jeep and sent us back to the barracks. So I realized that I was not a very good, and would probably not be a very good military person. 3.5 miles, can you believe that? I just kept marching. I had no sense of time and space at all. It's one of those miscalculations. And I still don't know how I did it. Except we got in early, we had a nice warm shower, we ate well, but of course we failed the exercise. But that was it.
You can blow up Weehawken or something.
That's
from
right.
here.
Well, we could have been on one of the main highways there. Oh, gee.
But you know what's next?
Senior year.
All right.
Okay. The highlight was getting my fellowship to Notre Dame. It wasn't the only fellowship I received. I had one from Maine and one from Maryland, but Notre Dame was the one that I really cherished and wanted to go. That was my highlight, and also doing very well in mathematics and enjoying mathematics, which was the important thing. Also graduating from the ROTC and getting a regular commission if I had chose to. And that was important to me because I always felt that I had this urge to leave the city for a while and live in different places, and that's why I think the military appealed to me. As it turned out, in my military career, I achieved a little of that. We lived in Washington for 3 years, lived up in Boston area for a very cold winter in a trailer, which was an experience, and then leaving and then my assignment was National Security Agency in Washington, and having a couple of trips abroad. So that it satisfied my desire. I could have easily stayed in the military. I have to say that. Even though I knew I liked teaching when I was at Notre Dame, even though I had a full fellowship, I asked for a teaching assignment because I just liked teaching, like that as a career. But I also enjoyed the military, and except for my wife, I probably would have settled for the military, and she was not very happy with the military, and I respected that. So I went into what I thought was my second choice, which was teaching, and it turned out to be, I think, wonderful choice, absolute wonderful choice. Yeah. So my senior year, military, and also the fellowship to Notre Dame. I can't say that there were any disappointments in my senior year. I guess we were all happy to get out and excited to get out. So in a sense, it wasn't. I don't remember any disappointments anyway.
Well, speaking of the Great Break, can you tell me about your commencement day and?
Oh yeah, I can remember that very clearly. Being an ROTC graduate, I had to wear my uniform for graduation. so that not only did we receive our degree, but we also received our commission on that day. My future wife was there, her family, my family. It was really a very big day. It was held in Roosevelt Stadium. We were all called individually up to podium, and the bishop was presiding, and I remember each person had their name called out by the academic dean, who had a beautiful voice, and it was really just a charmed day. It was June 3rd. It was sunny. It was just a gorgeous day. It wasn't hot, but it was sunny, and we had a nice crowd, and it was a nice place. It was just a lovely, lovely day. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me about some of the college athletic teams when you were a student there? You talked about school spirit, but can you tell me...
There was only one team. That was basketball. There was only one team.
Okay, what are some of your memories of the basketball team?
They were good. We had good teams when we were going to school. Don Kennedy was the coach at the time, and he ran a very good program, and we had a lot of spirit because of it. We didn't have winning teams all the years that I was there. At least we did have winning teams, I think all of them, but they weren't outstanding. But we had a couple of outstanding teams. But beyond that, except for intramurals, there was very little. We had a baseball team, and I would imagine very much like what our baseball team here. We don't have much attendance, you know. So I think it's essentially the same. We didn't have the swimming team. We had a bowling team. We had a fantastic bowling team. We also had a fantastic rifle team, nationally recognized. Not that you'd have many much participation. You were really selected to do both of those. But we had national reputation for both of them. Yeah. But they're not spectator sports, so it didn't really reflect in terms of school spirit or anything.
Good. Doing excellent. We're almost down to the end of the student questions here.
Okay.
Oh, gee. What was the best advice and guidance you received from your days at St. Peter's College?
The best advice I received as a student was from the math department to try for a fellowship and to actually go with encouragement. That was the best advice that I received. Yeah. And they were very supportive. The teachers were very, very supportive, which I thought was very, very good. But you know, when you come out as a student, you really have a lot of self-doubts, as you know, as everyone else knows, and you really do need that support. And I had tremendous support from the math department, and I think it was a very much part of the happiness I've had in my life because of that.
What advice would you give somebody who, let me rephrase that, tell me the value of a St. Peter's College experience for someone who might be watching?
The value of a St. Peter's College experience. I really, even though I'm technically oriented, mathematics background, computer background, I think the liberal arts approach is so worthwhile. I see it reflected in my children who have gone here. They have made major job changes. They could handle it. They handled it. They went from technology to arts, back to technology. And to me, that was the liberal arts. And I would say that be grateful that you're going to a liberal arts college, and that St. Peter's College holds to that tradition, because it really is the broadening of a person, and in all of the senses, because and not just in terms of jobs, but your own personal satisfaction, being able to question, being able to read. Hopefully, let's hope they're all reading now, but that's a big problem with technology and television. But just enjoying things, other things in life. To me, the liberal arts is the biggest and the most valued possession that we can give to our students. Yeah.
So tell me about your children and when they went to school here and what they gathered from a St. Peter's College education.
All right, I've had I have 5 children. One was a history major. That's Elizabeth, my oldest. She graduated, got very heavily involved in student activities. In fact, all of my students, except for my oldest son, all of my students except him got involved in student activities. Her goal in life when she graduated St. Dominic Academy was to be a checkout for 2 Guys. 2 Guys was then in business, a department store. And I reared against that. All of her friends were going, and there was a lot of peer pressure, and I simply said no, that she had to at least start St. Peter's College. And if she didn't like it after the first year, then she could make any decision she chose. She loved it. And all of the kids sort of followed in the same footstep. She's a lawyer. She went to law school after she graduated St. Peter's as a history major. My oldest boy started out as an art major. He wound up as a computer science major. He has his own consulting business. He's Daniel. David started out as an accounting major. Wound up as a computer science major. He works for he worked for IBM, and he now works for J.P. Morgan in computers. His twin, Judith Calianese, was a liberal arts major, stayed an extra year to become an English major, went into business, and is now dealing with computers very heavily. And that's a transition that she made. My son, being an art major, being transferred into chemistry major, and also does a lot of painting on the side. He and Oscar Magnan are friends, you know, so he has a little talent. Then I have my son Alexander, who started out as a business major and went into computer science. So they're the 5, and they've all made transitions that are very good. I think the liberal arts has helped all of them. You know, certainly they have such nice varied background, which I like about the kids. They read a lot. I like to read novels. I like to read mystery novels, detective novels, and so do my girls. And in fact, we have a club that when I purchase a book, I shipped it off to them, and then we discuss them. And it's been going on for years. I insisted, how can you insist with your children anyway? Well, when they were growing up, I read to them at night. And they are now reading to their children at night. And I can think that can only help their kids, and I hope that they pick that up, because I think that's important. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I'm very proud of my family. I wonder why. Okay, but that's strictly subjective. But I think they're fine people. Fine people.
I agree.
And I think St. Peter's, and they love St. Peter's. They loved St. Peter's when they came to St. Peter's. They loved it, and they still love it. Yeah. But that's the spirit that you know, that me as a father, very very happy and proud of.
Excellent. That's it. Family's the most important thing.
Oh, yeah.
My uncle still mourns the loss of 2 Guys. He just finished up some razors he bought from 2 Guys just before they went out of business.
Oh, really? Yeah.
A couple of months ago, but I digress. Okay, we'll bridge into the. You want to take a break, or you're?
No,
fine?
I'm fine.
You're doing great, and wow, you. Excellent. You're wearing me out, but this is good. This is good. That's it.
Sure.
Oh yes.
If you're talking to an outsider who is not appreciated, who's not familiar with St. Peter's, and their background in math is questionable, how, as a person who's graduated with a math background, strongly in the math background, how does St. Peter's become a place where they might find themselves from your experiences?
In terms of mathematics, or just themselves as a person?
In terms of mathematics.
In terms of mathematics, well, it's really difficult. I find that there are two types of teachers, I find. All right, you have the teacher who teaches the discipline, okay, and then you have the teacher who teaches the discipline to students, okay, and it's the two students that's the important aspect, I think. And I think there's a need for both, okay. You need the teacher who teaches the discipline regardless of how they relate to the student or not, because that's going to take the very bright in mathematics and it's going to push them on a little bit further. I think it's incumbent upon the institution, if a person is weak in mathematics, to make sure that there are resources available to that student so that student can get as much as they possibly can in terms of mathematics. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. For those students, I think you have to provide a lot of teachers who teach the discipline to students, because they're not going to get it. There are some people who are just naturally bent for mathematics. I think I was naturally bent. I think some people are given that type of gift. I think Dr. Poyani is another person, and in most cases, women are not. I mean, if you look at some of the records in the past, they have not been that bent. Or it could be cultural, it could be anything. I don't know what it is, but there are some people who have that ability. But for the people who don't have that ability, I think it's the responsibility of the college to provide at least the services available, make the services available so that person can move.
The reason I ask that is because my background is somewhat questionable in mathematics, and as a student of state, Jersey City
Yeah.
State, I'm having a very difficult time, and I'm a senior.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a
Sure.
very difficult time with mathematics, and it's because coming from the Southern school system, I was in Baltimore most of my life, and they just pushed us through school. We never learned.
Mm-hmm.
They
Well, that happens here too.
they
Yeah.
just threw us through, and it was like when you were ignored after a certain level, they didn't bother to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of got pushed into something you liked, and then you were suddenly 25, 35 years
Yeah.
old, and you realize you missed something. And then as you sit in a classroom full of younger people
Mm-hmm.
who have excelled at this field, or who have just come out of high school and is still very fresh, and you're 15 years out of the loop, you feel kind of neglected and alone.
Sure.
You don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And the teachers expect this to be an ingrained thing inside you.
Mm.
I mean, my background is arts, not
Yeah.
mathematics.
Well, that's where we really have to be careful of who you choose as a teacher, and you really have to search those teachers who like to teach.
Yeah, and that's a
and-
big problem today as well.
Yeah.
I see with a lot of I've gone to University of Maryland, I've gone to Jersey City State.
But here at St. Peter's, you have the call center, which is excellent. They have peer tutoring. Sometimes peer tutoring is the
Yeah, you need
the
somebody to
unit.
talk on your level, and that's what's not being
Exactly.
taught today. A
Yeah.
lot of teachers are here, and the students are here. And
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't kind of.
However, even at St. Peter's College, we have teachers that are here and here with the students. They are really very good, and they hit both. And
Well, I hear from the way you speak and the way I've heard other interviewees speak, it seems that at the time there was a sort of balance.
mhm.
There was a sort of, even if a person was sort of tilting to one side or the other, there was somebody there to help.
Yeah.
And that's not there today.
No.
And that's a big problem with most of the colleges.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact it's a liberal time, it's something's wrong with the education.
Mm-hmm.
If you're specialized in something, they give you time, but now it's like in other areas where you should know, you don't.
Yeah. That's where I think liberal arts is so important. You're pushed into those areas that you don't know. It is so important.
I understand computers, but I have a hard time with math.
Yeah, I know, yeah. They used to be tied very tightly, but no longer. They're completely different. Yeah, yeah.
That's why I'm history. I have math, 2 and 2. What's that?
Right.
I can give you the history of the number 2, but I can't add it up.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Well, I'm not quite sure that the grand experiment in teaching the, quote, new math was very successful. I think it confused things.
Oh,
A lot.
came through it, and
Yeah.
when I came through it in the 70s, I still didn't get
Sure.
it.
Yeah, I know.
I missed it.
I know, and I think it just confused the issues more. And they're still, you know, it's out. They don't know whether it was a success or not. But what damage did it do to some of the students who were familiar with traditional mathematics? I don't
it's
know.
sad because I was studying Leonardo da Vinci when I was 5 years old. I knew
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo.
Well, that was your interest, you see.
But in the school systems, there was nothing to support me.
Yeah. What we're going to do, we're trying to develop a inoculation that will make people who take this shot interested in mathematics and know all about it. That's
Oh, just keep it away from me. That's a good idea, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Set? Okay. Well, before we bridge into the faculty, which is very short, it's shorter than the,
Okay,
the students.
good.
So. Okay, I'm going to mention some names to you. First, presidents, and then just give me your impressions of them, some of your workings with them, and all that, and that'd be great. Okay, we'll start with, you didn't know Father Hart, did you?
Yes, I did.
We did. Okay, Father Vincent Hart.
Vincent Hart, very fine person. My wife was his private nurse when he had a heart attack. They were looking for nurses, and they found out my wife was a nurse, so my wife volunteered to be his private nurse. Very fine person, very staid, very stately, and he maintained that appearance. A very, very fine person.
Did you know Dennis Comey?
Who?
Okay.
Dennis, no.
Okay, that's going opposite direction.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go forward. Father James Shanahan.
He was he was also a he gave the impression of a very stately Jesuit, okay, head of the ship. I didn't know him very well at all. I knew Hart a little bit, a little bit. I was a little closer to Hart than I was to Shanahan.
Hey, Father Edward Clark.
I'm sorry, did I say Hart? I think Clark was I'm sorry. Let me go back. There's the memory again. Scratch that segment. It was Clark who my wife took care of, not Hart. Yeah, Clark was the one. So if you just switch everything around and go in there with a computer terminal and change Hart to Clark, we're okay.
Okay, we'll have to edit the Clark.
Right, okay.
Or I can
No,
Clark.
Yeah,
Clark. Okay.
it was Clark that.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Okay. Father Leo McLaughlin.
Strange. Very, very outgoing person. Had the feeling that you knew him and he knew you. Very open person. I thought he was I really thought he was a very talented person. I knew Father Leo Clark fairly well, yeah. He was only present for a very short period of time, very much like what I feel Jesuits do very well. They manipulate. I'm not saying that in a derogatory way at all. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. In many cases, they use you, and your talents to the positive for both, I think. He had I remember when women were, the idea of co-ed first came up, quote, straw vote. The straw vote became a final vote. That was Leo McLaughlin, so he allowed the first women in. But he was that type. But I liked Leo McLaughlin, yeah. But he was a strange person, sort of open and very strange.
Father Vic.
You can't say too much about Father Vic. He made you feel like you were the most important person on the earth, on earth, when you talk to him. He was warm. He was open. He was down to earth. He walked with giants. He was just a very unusual person. And I don't know of anyone who won't have a kind word for him. He's just a very unusual person. He personally, he changed my whole life around. I was right near my dissertation, and I needed time for my dissertation. And he called me in one day, and he said, I hear you're close. And I said, yes. He said, what do you need? I said, I just need a little time to do it. And I have to say, he went around everyone. Somebody said, take 6 months off. I mean, he was that type of person, you know. So I had a sabbatical without having to go through the formal process. It was late, but it was right near the time when I was going to get my degree. But that's just a small part of him. I mean, he was so generous in his time. I remember a funny incident with him being head of the computer center. We used to have, I was very close to the students, and we had a very large student work group, all volunteers. And we had a Christmas party. And he was coming from another Christmas party. My smallest son, Alessandro, was there, and he must have been 4 years old, maybe 4.5, 5 years old. And he was throwing a ball down on the second floor of McDermott, you know, ball, and he'd bounce it off and he'd come back and he'd run around. And this was after hours. This was 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So he comes running around the corner, and who does he bump into? Literally bump into, but Vic Yanatelli. And Vic he loved it, you know, and he said, why? He says, how? He said, what's your name? He said, Alexander. He says, what does your father do? He says, oh, he owns this building. Vic never let me forget that, you know. And he was just a warm person. Young kids, everyone, very fun. He was one of the reasons why I go to Auriesville. Just I wanted to visit his grave, particularly his grave. Yeah, he was just a warm person. Yeah.
I have yet to hear bad words.
Oh, if you do, I want to know that person. There has to be one person I would imagine, but I don't know of anyone. Yeah, he's such a warm person.
Okay, Father Edward Glynn.
Father Glynn. I liked Father Glynn. You knew where you were at with Father Glynn. Very strong opinions. He had his own opinions. But at least you knew where you were. He was a lot freer than I think a lot of people realized. When I got involved with developing the MBA program, that happened, and in a sense, it was okayed at the corner of Glenwood and Montgomery Street. We had a fire drill. I was teaching at the time, and Father Glynn was, and he had to vacate the building, and I had to vacate. And we were talking on the corner there, and I said I was thinking about proposing an MBA program. He said, well, if you do and it looks pretty good, you won't have any problem with me. And in a sense, that's how the MBA program got its initial start. So in a sense, you know, he's thought of as being very strict, especially for budget and things like that. But he was very progressive, I think, in his thinking.
Okay, Father Degnan.
Father Degnan. Father Dan Degnan. I liked Father Degnan. I've liked almost, I think I like all of the presidents, I have to say that. He's, what can I say, temper. He had a temper. And I had never, and I still haven't, been witness to that. But I've heard stories about his temper to a point where I had to develop what I would do in case it did arise. I mean, I had to prepare myself because I wouldn't know how to react. So so I developed this whole scenario as to what would happen if I were not subject to his temper tantrum. It was not. I've never been witness to any of his temper tantrums. However, it's been reported to me by a lot of people that have been witnessed, and he's done some things that has not pleased the faculty, and I agree with the faculty, and I think he should have, in retrospect, should have at least consulted the faculty in a lot of the different things. He has his own opinion, but I think he's done a lot of good things for the college. I think getting Whalen on board and throwing him out, in a sense, and having Whalen come back in, I think beautifying the campus, I think that was important. He's had some very good progressive ideas. It's a shame that his personality didn't allow him to see some of his things to fulfillment.
Okay, we'll put you on the spot. Father Logren.
Father Logren. I was very hesitant with Father Logren. He's opposed to technology, so and that doesn't bother me too much because a lot of the presidents knew very little about technology or have any interest in technology. I recently went on one of his retreats, and I was pleasantly surprised that he has I've always felt he's a very sharp person. I've always felt that. Even talking to him, I think he could be manipulative if he wanted to be, but he's a Jesuit. Okay, and that comes with the cloth. But he has a very sharp wit, and I enjoyed that, and it surprised me. And I think he has I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I think he has a dedication to try to make St. Peter's the best it possibly can. So I respect that in what I feel for him. But I don't know how other. I know how other faculty feel, that he's sort of remote. He's not on the scene. He doesn't. He makes appearances at the main functions. And yet I've seen him at appearances late in other functions, like going away parties and farewell parties and things like that. He's still a big mystery to me at this point. Yep.
I understand it's kind of soon to
right. Yeah.
say anything. Okay. How about during your days as a faculty member, academic vice presidents that have stuck out in your mind?
Oh, there were. For good and bad, there were some very good ones, I think Frank Mertz was the first one I could. No, I'm sorry, it's not Frank Mertz. The first one that I think was Ed Ryan. I thought he was very fine. I really do think that his lobbying in Trenton saved St. Peter's College. It's through him that students got their financial aid, at least through his lobbying and through the efforts of the college. And I think because of that, he in a sense saved St. Peter's College. I'm not quite sure in terms of annihilation, but it certainly kept it intact the way it was and allowed us to then have a basis to grow. Very stiff person. But I thought he was fine. He had a fine mind. He was involved in the late, the student strikes in 69, 70. I was the chair of the faculty senate committee at the time, and I was involved with some of the negotiations with the students and the administration. I think he handled himself admirably. I just think he's a fine person. So he's one. Frank Mertz was another person who I thought had a very good business sense. I'm not quite sure he was strong on the academic end, I think that Ed Ryan was strong on both ends. I'm not quite sure that Frank Murch was strong on the academic end. I think he is right now. I think when he went from St. Peter's to independent colleges and then back to Fairleigh Dickinson, president of Fairleigh Dickinson, I think he has a very good balance. And but I've had absolutely no problems with Frank at all. I think he had a building vision to try to complete the college, at least at that point, to have a rec center and have all of the things in place. And I think he did a very good job at that. The current AVP, George Martin, I think also has a place, and I mentioned it to him. I think that he, in another way, has also saved, in a sense, helped save the college. And in the dwindling student pool, I think it was his appointment and his energies that has turned that around. I know that there is problems he has with the faculty, but I really do think that he had a major part of that turnaround. He was the dean at the time, and then became AVP, and he concentrated everything with on the admissions effort, and I think that was important. I've worked with all of well, I can't say I've worked with all of the VPs. There's only one VP that I haven't worked with, and I had very big difficulty with. I won't mention the person's name, but it's one of the ones in the list that I haven't mentioned since I've been here. And but I've worked with all of them. I've really seen the benefits of them. I've seen the benefits of Jim Grant, sort of a complacent person. So I've worked fairly well with all of them, and I've in most cases I've enjoyed working with them. Yeah.
What are the initials of this Mr. No. I'm just nice try now. But that's good because we don't want to rank anybody.
No,
so,
no, not at all.
no.
And it was really I think it was more my end than anything else.
Okay, we won't go too far down.
Okay.
Okay, last one, deans. Any academic deans stand out in your mind?
Yes, a couple of them. I think Jim Pegalotti was a very fine dean. I think he was disappointed he didn't get the AVP, the vice president. It wasn't AVP then. I think it was just the VP. But Jim Pegalotti was a very fine. Though he was a chemist, he had such a broad background in the arts, in liberal arts, and he was just a very fine person. Pete Alexander, our current dean, is a very, he's by the book more than, he likes the letter of the law, as I understand, more than the spirit of the law. I work well with Peter. We've had some deans who were really strange, during some important meetings, flying paper airplanes around and things like that. But I live with almost anyone. I enjoy interacting with people.
Okay, initials and flamethrowers here.
Okay.
We have to
That's
this is
right.
great. We have to okay, we'll get on to the faculty, and it's good. It's shorter than the student. And you're doing good. Need
Okay.
a drink or anything? Or are you
No,
fine?
no, that'd be fine.
Okay. Okay, tell me about your special field of academic study or interest as a faculty member.
Right now it's computer science. I've had major changes, and I have to give Ed Ryan, again, a plug in that. I was in mathematics for 7 years. I taught in the math department for 7 years, and we got our first big computer on campus. And I looked around for the most knowledgeable person on campus. I was not that person. A fellow named Frank Verricchio, who was in the math department, who had studied computers and knew a lot about computers, was offered the position of heading the academic computer center. He was really interested in that, but apparently negotiations between he and the administration fell through. So they asked the second most knowledgeable person on campus, and that was me. After consulting with Frank to make sure I wasn't just the wedge between his negotiating power and the administration, he said no, he would not take the job. Apparently there was a real breakdown. I took the job and it changed my whole academic life. At that point I was ready for my orals at NYU. I had finished all of my coursework and I was preparing for my orals. I took a year off to take over the new job. Then I liked it so much that I decided to make a career change. So I looked around and looked at the colleges in the area that offered Ph.D.s in computer science. Stevens was one of the first to do that. So I transferred my credits from NYU to Stevens, and I got my degree from Stevens. Father Ed Ryan was the one that offered me the position, and I was very grateful for him for doing that. Changed my whole life. I love my job.
Wait, before you go there, what's your impressions of the Mars Pathfinder, since you're doing computer science?
The Mars Pathfinder,
Yeah.
it's an amazing feat. It's an amazing feat. I love it. I mean, I see it every day on internet. If you take a look at you can go to an internet site and see all of the new pictures that are coming down. I think it's just, I think space travel is just an amazing feat. Amazing feat. Thank heavens for the space age. Kennedy was the one that really pushed computers right into the forefront. I mean, if you look at the computers that were being built right after Sputnik went up, they were large machines. So how can you get a capsule off the ground with this big machine, to run it? And they needed computers. They couldn't handle it by just manual operations. So he put an effort in, a lot of money, a lot of government money, into miniaturizing computers, and that's why we got such small machines now. And it just started the whole research, and so it's just amazing. I mean, Gates even says that if he goes on vacation for more than 2 weeks, he's behind. So he can't take more than a 2-week vacation because someone's always developing new things. So yeah, it's exciting.
All changes. I mean, you've
Oh,
seen it
yeah.
from the very beginning to now. So I mean, how does St. Peter's fit into that?
Oh, I think we're way ahead. Believe it or not, we're way ahead of a lot of the big companies. I think we have technology on campus now that a lot of companies do not have, such as free access to internet. A lot of the companies don't have that. You don't have some of the tools that we have on campus. They have specific tools to do their particular job, but it doesn't allow them to investigate other areas that we do here on the campus. So I think that we have our technology on campus is very, very high.
Perfect lead-in. Perfect lead-in. That's just, I was going to ask you to give a synopsis of how the computer department has started and evolved through the years up until the present.
All right. I started in terms of the evolution. I started by indicating how the area started. I think one of the big benefits, or one of the reasons why the college has progressed very, very smoothly, is that we had at the beginning and we have right now. I'm not quite sure we should have it in the future, but right now we have 2 separate computer departments. We have the academic computer department that services the academic community, and we have the administrative computer center, the information services that service only administration. We both have different systems. We're tied together, and that has come through the academic computer center. We tie our stuff into the administrative systems so that faculty can do advisement and things like that. But that separation has helped us a lot because we had no competition in terms of service. We had our population that was servicing 100%. The IS had their population that they serviced 100%. If we merged, then you'd have to have priorities, all right? 80% here, 20% there at times, and you'd have that tug of war as to which should get priority over the systems, whether the administration and or academic. We've had no tugs in terms of that, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've grown a lot. We've grown a lot also because of federal grants. We've been very successful in getting grants for computer technology. We've been very successful in getting donations from companies, and a lot have been scratching, just going out and trying to get new state-of-the-art technology. We always have a segment that's state-of-the-art, and I think that's important for the college to have a segment that's state-of-the-art. Unfortunately, there's a lot of part of our equipment that's not state-of-the-art, that's behind state-of-the-art. But it would take a very rich college with a very large endowment to keep state-of-the-art in all areas. So what we do is we try to keep state-of-the-art in certain areas. If you take a look at the panorama of computers that we have, old machines, not so old machines, and brand new machines. All right, and we'll always be that way, unless we change our whole philosophy, which I think we might be doing anyway.
Very good. You mentioned the MBA program. Do you still have a? Are you still involved with teaching, or?
Oh, I still teach in the MBA program.
Can you tell me
yes.
about the evolution? You told me about how
beginning
it started.
of it. Yes.
Can you tell me about the MBA program and how it's progressed?
Let me tell you one of the reasons why it started. As chairman of the computer science department, I had to write a lot of recommendations to students who were going into not computer science graduate degrees, but really going into MBA graduate degrees. So and we had a very fine computer science department. So I said, well, gee, if we're writing a recommendations, why not think about the possibility of offering an MBA at the St. Peter's? But it had to be a unique program, because if you look at graduate programs, they sap one department. If you have a graduate program in mathematics, the mathematics department takes the major. So you have to have the talent in that department to handle that. If you take the graduate education department that we have at the college, that's solely in education. So the education department has to handle everything, both graduate and undergraduate, and it's a tremendous sap on the resources. Well, when I first started to look at the MBA program, I was impressed with a program on the West Coast, which simply said, get a degree in ? And what they did was that they provided a core course, and then if you wanted a degree in another department, they give you a core of a program. And if you wanted a degree in the biology department, then you go to the biology department. They would supply if you wanted it in chemistry, you'd supply in the chemistry department. So I looked at the MBA program and I said, well, why couldn't we do that without offering a core and then having these other departments handle that? Why couldn't we involve a lot of departments in the program? Certainly a manager has to have a lot of different backgrounds. So we involved 7 different departments in our program, in a 48-credit program, which meant that not one department was overtaxed. And I think that's one of the benefits. The students got a broad background in all of the techniques needed for being an MBA manager, and yet not one of the departments was really taxed. And more than that, our full-time faculty can be enticed in teaching the courses, and they get which is a big benefit. 90% of our teachers are from the full-time faculty and not adjuncts. It has grown tremendously. We started out expecting 35 to balance our budget. We finally got about 75. We grew every year at a percentage rate of close to 10, 15%, sometimes 30%. We have now about 256 students. We graduated our second largest last year at 101. I think the year before that was 105. So it really has gone in a very big, and we've offered new programs, and we're offering new weekend colleges now and things like that. Yeah. So I think it's been a tremendous benefit for the college and for the students.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we'll go back to the origins here. What made you, let's see, Why did you choose to teach at St. Peter's College, and what did you hope to achieve once you started here?
Could we get back to that in a couple of minutes?
Sure.
I have to make a phone call.
Oh, sure,
Can I make a
please.
phone call? Can
Sure.
I?
Oh, yeah, please.
I
Take
just want to get a drink, and I just want to make a
Right.
phone call.
Sure. I hope I'm not holding you. I mean, we're...
I forgot I had to see someone, and they're leaving at 4:30.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just, oh,
Oh,
that's my,
Sorry.
that's all right.
That's
You know what I'll do?
It's always the
Can I take this out?
Yeah, just unplug it.
Because I think it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, I'll just stop the recording.
I don't know how you unplug this.
You press down on
Oh,
the
I
button.
see, yeah.
there we go.
Carry that with me, how's that? And I'll be back. I just wanted to,
Sure.
in a sense, apologize.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Very good. Okay. How's he looking? He looks great, but how's the angle?
He's looking. Let me look on both cameras. He's looking. He's fine.
Good. Okay.
He's right in the middle. Right where he should be.
Ernie Kovacs, when he did his show, before he paused the commercial, the actors stood in place like this, and then when they came back, they said resume, so they got up from
Well,
where
I think
they.
Gerard's gonna go on with the computer and, you know.
Wasn't Ernie Kovacs great, though?
I loved Ernie.
Oh,
Well, I'm from Trenton, so I mean,
oh, really? Oh,
his
yeah.
influence is still all
He
over.
he had some super night shows. He used to have the skit every week about the flub, the big flub. He'd have a big race car driver, and also the car wouldn't start. The crazy things, absolutely crazy. I liked Ernie Kovacs very much. Yeah.
He was a genius.
Oh, wasn't he?
Genius.
Gosh.
Way ahead of his time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, but unfortunately, Ernie didn't go to St. Peter's. But our loss. Okay, but anyway, last question I asked you. Why did you choose to teach at St. Peter's, and what did you hope to accomplish? What did you hope to accomplish once you started at the school as a teacher?
I had just gotten out of the service, my 3-year hitch, and I had an opportunity to teach at St. John's University. I came back to St. Peter's College to talk to the head of the math department to ask him for a letter of recommendation for a teaching position at St. John's. And that night he gave me a call after he said he agreed to do that. He gave me a call. He said, "Why don't you apply at St. Peter's College? Because we have an opening also." I chose St. Peter's because I had fond memories of St. Peter's College, and I guess you always feel like you have to pay a little bit back. But my goals were to teach. I love teaching. I still love it. Since 1961, and even before that in graduate work. But I also wanted to get my advanced degree, and I thought that would be the opportunity in an environment like St. Peter's College, and I think the support that St. Peter's College would give did that for me. You know, I didn't mention before, but St. Peter's College also helped financially support me through graduate school. It wasn't only me, but all of the faculty, and I thought that was a tremendous benefit in terms of supporting faculty in scholastic pursuits. So so they were a benefit. So I wanted to teach. I thought that was going to be my profession, and I just wanted to do a good job, and I wanted to get my degree, my advanced degree.
Very good. So what was the first class or subject you taught, and what stands out from that memorable occasion?
It really wasn't memorable, only because I've had experience in graduate school teaching. So going into my first class was not traumatic to me. I enjoyed it. I knew I enjoyed it, and all I can say about the first group of students that I have, I really can't pinpoint the first class I've ever gone to, was that I thought they were extremely bright, and I was happy about that because it kept me sharp. And I formed some very good friendships with the first group of students that I taught in the college. One of them is now on the Board of Trustees, Dr. Bastek. He was a math major. His wife, who's also on the Board of Trustees, Carol, and I taught her at St. Peter's College. That first group, I formed a friendship of one of the students, Dennis Santamaro, and his family, and I was his best man at his wedding. You know, that type of thing. And it was that type of closeness that all faculty had with students. We have a summer home, and we used to have annual parties for all of the math majors and the people in the computer center. We used to have them on weekends to do things around the house. They weren't tough things or anything, but it was an excuse to get them into an atmosphere that with faculty and things. And I think that was a benefit for them. I think they enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it. And I think they enjoyed that also. And I think their parents enjoyed it.
Any other individual students stand out from your days of teaching them?
Oh.
And do they stay in touch with you?
Oh, sure. Dennis Santamaro, though we're not as close, but he still keeps in touch. I had some very, very talented students. Raymond Marzolowicz was another student in the 70s, early 70s, I think, who was a very talented person. He essentially ran the computer center, even though he was a student, extremely bright. I remember the first secretary I had, which was a student, Donna Hupvogel. She married a person who worked